Welcome to What the Freak. Today, I'm excited to be joined by my friend and brother, Jospeh Kauffman. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
Cool. I met Jospeh originally in a men's group here locally in Phoenix, associated with a group named Sacred Sons. Andrew is kind of the primary facilitator there. And just had a really cool connection, just know some really cool threads that we both vibe with, and just similar spiritual paths that we've been down in this lifetime and I'm sure previous ones. So Jospeh, welcome to the podcast. Would love for you just to introduce yourself and maybe just share a couple pieces of knowledge for the audience on who you are and what you care about.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. Really looking forward to this conversation and just grateful to be here.
Mm-hmm.
I never really know how to answer that question. I feel like I have so many things that I'm interested in so many different aspects of this journey, but I guess I've been just on a journey of self-discovery and trying to understand more about myself, more about life, and about the truth. And this journey kind of started for me when I was about 16 years old. I had a mystical experience, out-of-body experience that really just totally shook up my worldview and my perspective on life. And ever since then, I've just been inquiring into who I really am, what the truth of life is, what I'm really doing here, what we're all doing here, and just continuing to grow and expand and understand more. And that's taken me in many directions, many places. I've always been really big into writing ever since I was a little kid. So the more that I learned, the more I would write down what I learned. And I started writing and creating books. So I've written 8 books now. So
oh, wow.
That's something I love to do is write. Yeah. And that also took me traveling. I was really drawn to travel and explore different places. And so for a couple of years, I traveled around the United States, traveled to India a couple times, to Peru a couple times, Guatemala, Nepal, China, and doing lots of different retreats, different trainings, and just continuing to learn more and grow more. And I've really had a lot of fascination with Eastern spirituality, Buddhism in particular, and yoga and Hinduism, and trying to learn from what these teachings reveal and what value they can add to my life. And I have always had this passion to share what I learn, because I feel like the state of the world that we're in right now is so uncertain, and there's so much fear, there's so much chaos going on. So I want to try to embody love the best that I can and try to spread that love into the world and just do my part to help us realize our unity and live more harmoniously in the earth. So that's kind of been my journey. I also have a company called Conscious Collective that's taken many different forms. Now I'm creating online courses and starting to share more of that knowledge that I've learned over the years. But I'm just really passionate about awakening and healing, and trying to continue to awaken and heal myself and help others awaken and heal.
Dope. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Love
it. Yeah, I just want to take a moment to just reflect my admiration for you being just such a multi-passionate human being is maybe one term I'd put for it, and just like so willing to go with the flow and explore different paths and side adventures and just like different practices. I just really have so much just respect and resonance with people who weave together many different paths, and you definitely, from when I first met you, came off as someone like that who, you're really into that. So that's awesome. And, you're still, I guess, in human years, so young for like, I feel like the wisdom that you carry and bring, and just the positive energy that you've been able to cultivate in yourself. So yeah, it's just, I'm also honored to have you on the show and just to have a cool conversation and see where it goes. So
yeah, thanks so much, brother. I love this space. I love being able to dive deep in these conversations. It's not every day you get to just have like an hour or two dedicated to deep conversation. So I appreciate being here, and thank you for that. I love that term too, the multi-passionate. Yeah, there's so many things to be interested in and to learn about. It's hard not to, for me I struggle trying to balance everything.
Totally. I'm on the same page for sure. Cool. Well, I would actually love to first jump into an experience you've told me a bit about already your darkroom experience. So this is something that I only more recently came aware of, that it was even a thing. I'd done some 10-day Vipassana silent meditation retreats. Have you done any of those as well?
I've done one of the 10-day Vipassana retreats, and I've done a 5-day one in the Spirit Rock tradition, so it was a little bit different than the Dhamma tradition, the Esen Goenka practice.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Vipassana is actually a term that has many different, well, it means insight, or looking deeply, but it has many different applications based on the different Buddhist tradition that you practice in. So every different tradition will provide a totally different retreat and practice, but the theme is around looking deeply.
Dope. Yeah. I'm always learning something new every day. That's awesome. But the darkroom retreat, so I first heard about it actually right about the same time from you and from Aubrey Marcus, because he just released a little mini documentary on one of his darkroom experiences. Would just love to hear a little more about what that experience is for you, and maybe what led you to wanting to do something like that.
Sure, yeah. This was actually the second time that I've done it. Earlier this year, in February, I did the first dark retreat. That one was 3 days long. This one, I sat in the darkness for 5 days. Each time I had planned to sit for a bit longer, but time is extremely disorienting in there. And it's just, you with yourself. And it's a really beautiful thing, but it's a really challenging thing too. There's just absolutely no escape from yourself. There's so many ways that we escape ourselves. We pick up our phone, put our phone down, we turn on the TV, turn the TV off, we look for social things to do, we go for a run, and all these things are fine in themselves, but often we're using these things as escapes, turning to drugs or alcohol, or many different ways we escape just facing uncomfortable emotions within ourselves. And so in the darkness, you don't have any escape. It's just you with yourself and whatever's arising in that moment, and no other place to go. And so it's a really powerful practice in that regard. And it's also, like I said, really disorienting, because you have so you're in a dark room, entirely dark. There's no light whatsoever, no way to tell what time it is. So I would go to sleep and I'd wake up and I would wonder, was that 20 minutes? Was this 8 hours? How long have I been asleep for? What day is it? Have I been in here 3 days now, or has it been 2 days? And so that would kind of mess with my head a little bit. And I just noticed eventually I'd get to a point where I'm like, okay, that's enough. I feel like I would from day one have that story in my mind about it's time to, or reasons or excuses for why I should leave. And then sit and observe and work with that story, and for a few days, and eventually get to that point where I felt like it was enough. So it was very humbling in that sense. I went in very confident, I'll sit for 7 days, no problem. And every day is just so long. But I first heard about the Dark Retreat when I was in Guatemala in 2017. They have a center there called the Hermitage, and they offer dark retreats, and that was the first time I'd ever heard about that. And it just really resonated with me. I've really been interested in meditation practice and providing those deep experiences for myself. And when I heard about that, I was like, wow, that sounds really intense and a really profound experience. So I was always really curious about it, and it had been on my mind for a while. And I had looked around the U.S. to see if there was any place that offered them, and there's actually a place in Ashland, Oregon that offers them. And so I reached out and I booked the retreat. And I was also really inspired by the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. They do that practice too. The dark practice is actually something that's been practiced in many different traditions, like the Kogi Mamos in Central America. They practice sitting in darkness for long periods of time. In Tibetan Buddhism, they have this advanced practice where they sit in there for 49 days and 49 nights. And,
wow.
Really, really intense. So I've just been drawn to it, and I really like to try things, try different things at least once, different spiritual practices or different techniques or modalities. I'm always up for giving them a try and just seeing what the experience is like firsthand. And so it was really curiosity that took me to it the first time. And once in the darkness, there's something just really magical about it too. It can be challenging at times, but it's just a total removal from everything. Just no external stimulus, no social interaction, no business or work responsibilities. It's just kind of removing yourself from the world to focus all of your energy on meditation practice and just sitting with and observing yourself. So the first time I did it, my mind was racing, and it was just such an interesting like back and forth kind of battle with my mind. I would have deep periods of meditation, and then I'd have times where I just like was looking for like an escape or something to do or how to get out of this. I just kind of recognize how active the mind is, and it was each time I've gone now, it's been a really profound awakening experience for me. Like I feel like it's this really nice reset where I get really deeply in touch with my being. Like this time, one of the main insights I think I came away with was a deeper awareness of the story inside of my mind, just the story of me and what I'm doing, where I've been, my memories, who I am. I just sat for hours witnessing and watching this mental narrative and sort of just observing it objectively and realizing it's just a story. It has its place, but it's not ultimately who I am, and that kind of opened me up to even deeper level of just being. And I think that was one of the big takeaways, was just being, just allowing myself to just be for hours on end. No need to do anything or figure anything out or get anywhere or be anything else, just being as I am and kind of letting everything else go and sinking deeper into that. And that has carried with me since then, just a little bit more closer connection to my being. And I could go on and on about it.
I want to touch on a piece you just shared there, because I find it really fascinating, the whole story piece. Immediately what came to mind when you were sharing that was like I got an image of like me like writing a book, let's say, about myself. It's like an autobiography, right? No matter how much detail I put in there, no matter like what that story ends up being, that might be at the present moment my best, most accurate portrayal of who I am. And yet that's just a book. That's just a story. That's not me. That's like, it's like a separate thing. And I just am relating to what you're sharing of like, oh yeah, there is this like story, or maybe identity is another related word I would use for that, of like maybe who I see myself as, or maybe who other people see me as. And it's, and each person also is going to have a different story about who I am. Hopefully most people have a fond story, like a positive story about me. Some people probably don't, whatever their experience was of me. And likewise for myself, it's like, hopefully, mostly I have a positive, empowering story about myself that is useful in some way. But there's also negative pieces of my story that I have about myself and who I am, or the limitations of who I am or who I can become. So just when you were describing that, I just felt the power of, at the very least, being able to take a step back from that story and not be so like attached to it or like grasping to it. Because I feel like that's what I've done much of my life. And I think more recently I've been learning to almost like hold it a little more lightly and just like see it. And I think like you mentioned, there is some usefulness to it. It's not like you want to just completely get rid of your story or everything about you. But probably in our society, I would say that I notice people get so caught up in their story, so attached to their perceived identity, that they actually limit themselves for evolving and becoming the next best version of who they can be. And there's also a disconnect from simply just valuing being and valuing being with yourself. And I imagine in a dark room where you literally have nothing else happening, like you have to learn how to be with yourself if you want to stay in there for any reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, the meditation's essential. I thought of that when I was in there, because that's pretty much all I was doing, is just meditating. And in between meditation, I would stretch or eat something or take a nap. But other than that, it's just hours of seated meditation. And I thought of that, like, if you don't have a meditation practice, then that is not the practice for you, to go into a dark room by yourself. But I think with the whole piece around the story, it goes really deep. And yeah, like I said, I I do think the story has some use, but what I think the issue is for most people is that they identify with their story as themselves. They have a story of themselves and they see that story of who they are, or as who they are, but it's just a story. It's just concepts in your mind based on your memory and the preferences of thoughts that you're choosing. So it's a story you're creating, and if you're so wrapped up in and identified with your story, then you are naturally going to forget your essential self. And so I think that the story is secondary, whereas our beingness, our awareness, our presence, this energy of life that we are, that's what's primary. And for many people, that those roles are reversed, where their story is primary. Their story is all they care about. Their story is what they want to inflate, what they want other people to validate, and they are so caught up in that need for their story to be seen that they don't have that recognition of their presence and their being. And sometimes maybe they do, but it's just little glimpses of it. It's like a secondary thing. And what I think for me has been really powerful is, like I said, recognizing that story is just a story, and then to realize the truth of myself beyond that story, and also the truth of reality beyond any stories. Because something that I continue to learn about the deeper that I go is, it seems very kind of subtle at first when speaking about it, but there's so much depth to this that reality is beyond any concept that we can have about it. The truth of reality with like a capital T, the absolute truth of life is not something that we can fit into words, into definitions or concepts or stories, and yet our mind is always trying to do that. We're always trying to put some narrative on our experience. We're always putting labels on things, judgments, classifying things in different ways and separating them from each other, and all of that is just mental activity. And we get so caught up in that conceptual way of thinking where we tend to lose touch with the actual living world and the reality of the present moment. And so I think to recognize that, and recognize that stories are ultimately just stories, that your thoughts are just thoughts, words are just words, they're not actually the thing that they're pointing to. They're super useful, like we're able to use words and thoughts to communicate these concepts, but the concepts are not what they're pointing to. And so for me, it's been like this big like aha kind of moment and realization of like, wow, anything I say about myself, any image I hold about myself or think about myself is ultimately not my essential self. And the same is true about reality. Any thought or belief or position I have about what reality is just one mental interpretation. It's not the absolute truth of it. And I think the only way we can really get in touch with that absolute truth is to let go of those stories, let go of those concepts, and really open ourselves up and open our awareness and our attention to the present moment without being so quick to put it into a box or so quick to judge it or put some narrative on it. If we just kind of hang out in this empty, open, spacious presence, then things start to become more known to us on this like intuitive feeling level instead of this intellectual, mental, conceptual level. So that's been something I've explored a lot, and I continue to find more depth in.
Yeah, that's powerful. I'm just going to take a moment to breathe that in. Yeah, I notice when I look out in the world today how much stories really drive things forward in our society, or another perspective, drive things around in circles in our society. And there's an interesting thing that happens when someone attaches themselves to a story or an identity of some sort. It almost makes that person susceptible to being manipulated and controlled in a way. It's like if I identify with a certain story, let's say a story that's like makes me a victim in some way, I'm actually stuck in that story, and other people can use that story to pull on my emotions and actually like affect how I behave and show up in the world. And yet, if I'm not too attached to my story, those threads that someone's trying to pull inside of me actually don't really work. So there's, I think, something coming up for me around, like how is being overly attached to a story actually me giving up my power in some way, or really not fully owning my sovereignty and like the truth of my being and the truth of who I am. I think you call it like the essential self. I'm like disconnected from that because I'm so attached to this story that I actually can't even feel the deeper aspects of myself, the deeper truths of who I am. And, you know, and that just doesn't feel good to me anymore. Like I have operated from that place for a good majority of this lifetime, and fortunately have, you know, been on a path and through a variety of ways of loosening that tight grip I've had on my story, and, you know, really opening up to like who am I and who can I become. And that's allowed me to expand my capacity and my capability so much more, and actually live a more joyful life, because the limited perception of who I thought I was able to actually fall away more and more, and a truer, more satisfying sense of self has been arising within me. But I think it really took releasing that stronghold I had on needing to have this story be like some kind of thing. You know, now it's like I can see my story and I can relate to it, and maybe it's useful to put that on in certain times or places, or, you know, identify with different stories that are useful for creating context for me moving and functioning in the world. But I more and more see them just as that. It's like, all right, this is a story, I'm playing a role here, this is my part, this is my character. But there's like, it's coming from a deeper place, you know, and that doesn't even mean that a story can't be authentic. You know, the story of myself as like, oh, like I'm a business owner, like that's like a story, right, that I tell myself. And there's a certain set of beliefs and expectations attached to that. And that's useful for me to put that lens on sometimes. But if I just see myself as that, you know, I can't actually also be an amazing creative person if I'm just this. For me, it's like the two things that come in my mind is, one, how can I expand the overall story that I'm telling about myself, and like have a more full story of who I am. That feels good to just like expand into that. And then two, how can I not get too stuck on any one story, any one narrow view of who I am or who I've been, a lot of times which are probably some way associated to some kind of trauma. If it's like a limited, you know, not helpful perspective, like there's usually something tied in there about who I was or what I've been through. But rather, how can I like open up to like an ever evolving version of myself that actually helps me progress and move forward rather than keeps me stuck in a place.
Yeah, I think there's so much so much around this, so many different ways that we could take this. But I think you made a good point when you were saying like the limitation of the story, because I think that's the thing, is like when you're attached to a story of yourself, you're creating a limit in which you can exist. So if I am this story and I identify with this story, then I can only exist within the confines of that story. And so everything I do will be filtered through that story and trying to fit into that story. And that doesn't allow me to expand into other potentials of who I could be. And I do think, you know, the different roles that we play in life, rather than identifying with those roles like many people do, if you have that deeper awareness of yourself as just being, then you can play all of these roles and there's no issue with them, but you're not attached to them for your sense of identity. So I can play the role of the business owner, I can play the role of the teacher, I can play the role of the student, I can play the role of the brother or the, you know, father or son or whatever the role is. I can play that role, but I don't identify myself as that role. And I think so much of this, so much of the spiritual journey in general, whether we, you know, put it in this framework or not, revolves around our sense of identity and our sense of self. Like one of the fundamental questions in spirituality is, who am I? You know? And that question can be asked in different ways. Like, what is God? What is the nature of the universe? Like, these are different ways of essentially saying, like, who am I? And I think when you have this real open inquiry into who you are, that's really where it starts, is to start to peel back these layers of identity one after another, because it goes so deep. If you are, just raised in society and conditioned by culture, like we all are up to a certain point, until you start inquiring, if you've just been programmed and conditioned, you're likely to identify with your name. There's this huge attachment to our name as it was just a label. It's just something our parents gave to us. It's not who we are. There is power in our name, especially if we like own it and use it. And I don't want to negate the name, but it's just a name. It's just a sound. It's just a word, a label. It's not who I am. I could have been named anything. We often identify with like the roles we have, like we said, like business owner or teacher or whatever role that I play in society. We identify with different gender roles, political roles. We identify with our religious beliefs. We identify with all of these things that we adopted after we were already born and already existing as a living being, things that we've just taken on from our culture and from other things that we've gone through in life. We take on this sense of identity. But I think in spirituality and also just in general, like the question that I'm really curious about is like, who are we at our core? Because I think if we can relax into our being and have this deep awareness of who we are and feel that and know that and rest in that, then everything else, we can like step into these roles. We can move into these other areas of life without getting so caught up in them, because like even our body, our feelings, our mind, all of these things aren't our essential self. All of these things are things that come and go, that are constantly changing, but there's an aspect of us that is unchanging. There is this presence, this awareness that is always here in the present moment. So no matter what has happened in life, no matter what I've experienced, no matter what I've gone through, I always am. And just that presence and that being, if I can get in touch with that and I can relax into that, then I can enjoy this like play of life. I can enjoy all the changes of life without grasping at them, without clinging to them and identifying with them. I can like play and have fun with life, and I can play all these different roles. I can, be this story. I can be that story. I can have whatever story, but it doesn't matter because I am not that story. People can have whatever story they want about me. It's all right. That's their projection. That's their perception. It's not me. So I think for me, I'm not very interested in like how I can have a better story about myself. For me, I don't think that, I want to internally create a story about myself at all, because it just becomes this narrative that I will start to identify with. And as long as I'm caught up in some narrative or caught up in some way of thinking, I'm not being present. I'm not being here in this moment. And when I really relax into my being, into this presence that I am, then I can just be here and I can be relaxed and at peace here. And it's really an interesting thing when you touch into that and just experience like being. It's like this deep relaxation of not chasing after something, not needing to maintain this sense of identity, because that's one of the things with identity too is if it's based on thought, if it's based on belief and concept, then we're always looking for ways to validate it and to maintain it and keep it up, and we're afraid of just being in silence because we fear that if we stop putting all this energy into our story, that it'll just disappear and that it'll just go away. And that in itself kind of shows the like illusion of it and like the instability of it inherently. And so I don't think you can really be truly at peace if you're always, chasing after and trying to build up this image of yourself. I think we need to inquire into that self-image and realize it's just an image of the mind. And so yeah, I've found from my experience, the more that I relax into presence, the more that I am just present, the more that I am just being and take that time to connect with that aspect of myself, it's like everything slows down. I have this deeper awareness of how everyone, myself included at times, are just like running on this hamster wheel. We're just always like going, need to do this, need to do that. And for what? What are we hoping to get out of it? Usually it's like happiness, or we think that something outside of ourselves will fulfill us and bring us peace. And all these things that we're seeking externally really arise from within ourselves, and they're available to us now. If we just stop that never-ending hamster wheel chase and just get off the wheel, sit down and just be. And I think that's a really powerful part to it too, is to just stop. Like how often in our day-to-day lives do we just stop? Just completely stop everything. Like stop trying to become something, stop trying to be something else, stop trying to pursue something, and just stop the mind, stop the techniques, stop the trying to get one up on reality or life, and just, if you can just stop everything, what is still here? What remains? There's this presence of being, this aliveness that we are, and that's always there. And so I think the more that we can recognize that and find stability in that, then that's where real freedom arises. The freedom to step into any role in life, to be anything you want to be in life, become any character, and treat it like this fun game, but to know that you are beyond that. Like many sayings go like, to be in the world but not of the world, because your true presence, your spirit, is beyond any of these changing forms. So I don't know, I could go more and more in depth on that, but I truly find that the story is just a story. It's just a projection of your mind, and no matter if it's a grand, beautiful, expansive story, or it's a narrow, contracted, fearful, victimized story, it's just a story. And as long as you're caught in your story, then you're not really awake to reality as it is. And for me, the journey has been more about becoming more and more awake to reality as it is, because reality is such a fascinating mystery. It's such a beautiful thing, and we miss out on so much of it, being caught in our story, caught in our to-do lists and our tasks, and our minds, our thoughts of the future, our memories of the past. And we don't spend in our culture very much time just being present in the now. And you hear that over and over again from different teachings and traditions about being here now, and I think that really is where the freedom lies.
Yeah, we don't really have many ways that we regularly value just being in our society. Like economically, it's not valued to just be.
Yeah, it's horrible for economic growth.
And not to say that like being just means sitting around. Like for me, at least, my relationship with being is actually, I can be doing while I'm being.
Absolutely.
But it's more of what is the quality of my experience of how I'm showing up? What are my intentions? How present am I? And where is the doing coming from? Why is the doing being done? And why is it happening? How is it happening? And how am I experiencing that doing? Is it because I'm doing because I'm striving and trying to get somewhere or become something, or achieve or have something that I feel like I don't have now? And I love and resonate with what you said, that, more or less, I think we do have what we need here now at all times, and or we can cultivate that within ourselves to bring it out more and more. Because really, joy doesn't live, for example, out in the world, right? Like I can't go and find joy. I can only reveal it or allow it to come forth, to experience it more fully, but I'm always experiencing it in my body and in my being. And so, so for me, beingness is, the question in my mind is, how do I deepen into connection with my beingness, where literally I would be totally okay, fulfilled, satisfied, just sitting, meditating, being with myself. And if there's something that genuinely arises where I desire to do something, and I can stay connected to my being while I'm being pulled, inspired, drawn to do something, to create something, to connect in some way, then cool, great. Yeah. Then I'm going to go and do that, and once I have completed, I almost said completioned. I kind of like completion. Once I have completioned that doing, then I can come back to this place of stillness and then see what else is here and see what's arising next. And so I think it's a subtle but important difference in how I'm approaching life more and more lately than how I used to, where the doing used to come from really a place of feeling incomplete and feeling like I needed to go out and find something or do something in order to be worthy, to feel good about myself, to experience joy, to experience peace, whatever it might be. there was some type of hole I was trying to fill through my doing. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where maybe to a degree, having a certain amount of life experiences brought me satisfaction in some kind of way. And I feel like even if that's the case, I think that way of showing up in the world can ever only be one of those graphs where like the curve gets closer and closer to the line, but it never actually hits it. What do they call that? An asymptote? It's like approaching an asymptote. I think that's the word. Where it's like, at first, it's you feel like you're making progress, you're getting some kind of somewhere, but then the more you do it, there's just these diminishing returns. And I noticed that, and this is a process I've went over the last 5 to 10 years where like just continuing to calculate the trajectory of me continuing down this path, I was actually never going to reach what was actually going to fulfill me, what was actually going to satisfy. It actually took an entirely different approach in order for me to experience whatever quality it is that I just truly desire to experience, whether that's peace or fulfillment or whatever it might be. And I'm more of the perspective that it's not that those efforts were wasted. I think I learned lessons from them. I think I did figure things out about life or learn things or experience things that ultimately contributed to my evolution. And it got to the point where I'm like, I'm just approaching this from the entirely wrong way if I actually want to experience what my heart desires to experience. If I actually want to experience a next level deeper truth, I can't do it. It's like what got me from point A to point B is not going to get me from point B to point C. Mm-hmm. So, I really appreciate and respect the perspective you come from, and I think it's so needed just on this planet at this time because there's so many people that are caught up in the doing, they're caught up in their identities, they're caught up in trying to become someone or something, rather than just noticing what's already here and like connecting to like one's own energy. And for me, that's been a really powerful experience, is just really for me understanding the value of just my inherent value. Like mm-hmm. I have inherent value. I don't actually have to go out and prove it or work in order to be valuable. And I think that's an interesting flip of the equation that most of us were taught, is like you actually don't have to work or provide value to be valuable. Not that you can't work or you can't provide value or you can't, increase or multiply value, but it's one of those things where you can only give what you have, or you can only give, who you are, really. And that's more and more the perspective I'm landing in lately is, what am I showing up to my life with? What am I showing up to my doing with? And is that coming from a place of seeking and grasping and emptiness, or is it coming from a place of fullness and actually like, oh, like I have these qualities already, and this is me just expressing the qualities that are already there within me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think most people are coming from a place of fear when it comes to that doing. If we underlie like the grasping and the craving and the like seeking and the trying to form this image, it's a lot of it underlying is just fear. It's a fear and a feeling of separation, and this fear of survival, fear that I'm not going to be loved, fear that I'm not going to be accepted, and all of these deep feelings of fear that exist within us cause us to like seek externally or think we need to do more to become worthy of love. And you don't. You're already love. You, in your being, you exist, and inherently you're already enough because of that. I think that as long as you're attached, kind of like the same, going back into that almost that story, as long as you're attached to your social identity and think that you are just this story of me and your name and your roles in society, if that's who you think you are, usually you'll never really feel like you're enough, because society's programmed us to think we need to get this and have this, and they're marketed so much to us that you're not enough unless you have this car, or unless you have this relationship, or you have this house, or you have all your things together. No one has their things together, And so I think that if you recognize your natural self the part of you that's an expression of nature, then you're beautiful. Like, you're incredible. Like, what is this body that we're inhabiting? How fascinating is it that we have this human organism that is pumping blood, that's digesting food, that's replicating cells, that's moving thousands of watts of electricity throughout our body? Like, what an incredible mystery it is just to be at all. And we lose touch with that when we are caught up in this very small sense of self in our story. And I think also, I noticed something that you said was like, and kind of pointed to a couple times, is like, other noises in the space. Hello. When you're connected to your being, when you're coming from being in what you're doing, then it's coming from this place of love. It's an expression of being. It's something that's really close to your heart and your most natural expression of joy. And it's coming from that really beautiful place. Whereas if you're not connected to being and you're just doing, it's usually coming from this place of fear. And I think that that is kind of an important thing to be aware of too. It's like, if we are connected to our being, then everything that we do can be an expression of that, and we can still act in the world without losing that awareness of ourselves. It's like, stillness isn't necessarily just sitting and not moving your body. You can sit and not move your body and be very active and restless and unstill, but you can also be walking, you can be running, you can be moving, working, while still connected to this place of stillness within you, because it's this stillness that's beyond movement, beyond form. Like, this is something I find, like, kind of when I was saying that concepts can't really communicate anything effectively, like nothing is really a concept, or reality is beyond all concepts. It makes it really hard to communicate this certain aspect of reality, of existence, that I think is really important for us to be connected with. And some of the ways I kind of think of it or try to illustrate it with words is that sorry, I just keep hearing there's like some construction going on.
Someone's hammering something.
Yeah. Oh well. So beyond every form, there is this formlessness. Beyond every object in space, there is like the space that it exists in, right? So like, all in this room, there's this space, and everything is existing within space. We can't see space, we can't like touch it or taste it, but we know that it's here. Like, it's that space that's allowing everything to be. And within ourselves, there's a quality that's like space as well. So beyond every thought that we have, beyond every image we form, every emotion we have, any mental activity at all, there's just this spaciousness that's always there. Or like, between every sound and beyond every sound, there's a silence. And it's a silence that's there regardless of whether there's sound. It's not like the absence of sound. It's just this background space of silence that sounds arise in, exist for some time, and then pass. But that silence is always there. In the same way with space, forms come into being, exist for some time, and then they go away. But that space is still there. In our mind, thoughts arise, they exist for some time, they pass. But that awareness is still here, that spacious presence. The only distinction between the space within us and the space outside of us, at least it seems, I can't say for sure on the outside, is that this space within us has a living quality to it. It is aware. It's not just like empty, lifeless space. It's this very alive, intelligent, conscious energy of space. And it's so much more than our small self. It's so much more than the idea of me and the idea of my life and my journey and what I'm doing. That is an expression of that, and it's a beautiful thing. But I think being in contact with this like self of the universe, almost like the entire universe has this intelligence and it's being expressed through our being, and to kind of marvel at the mystery of that and be in touch with that in yourself, I think is extremely liberating and extremely freeing, because if I'm in touch with that, then the things I do, the expressions that I have, are so much more than just me. They're so beyond me. Like and I feel that when it comes from that place, like when I create something from the heart, when I write a book or make some music or anything that's coming from that place, it doesn't feel like it's mine. It doesn't feel like I own that or I'm really the one that did that. It's like I just allowed that thing to come through from this deeper place, And honestly, I don't even know how I quite got onto this train of thought, but I don't know. Everything for me comes back to that being and being in touch with it. And I think that there's such an interesting duality in life and in spirituality, where you can either be coming from fear or you can be coming from love. You can either be accepting reality or you can be resisting it in some way. You can either be coming from this place of presence or this place of distraction, from spirit or from ego, from awareness or from the mind. And there's these interesting dualities that seem to be a part of life and a part of the journey. And I just notice, there's a deeper sense beyond that duality, but just speaking in terms of duality, I think you can either be caught up in your story or you can be in touch with your real self. You can either kind of be on like one side of the fence. And I think being in touch, this is where words are so difficult, because being in touch with that awareness, you can still be in touch with your story, but it's what's primary is your awareness rather than the story. But yeah, it's difficult because language is also always dualistic. So it's hard to speak of things in their connection and unity.
Yeah, I think that's why I like making weird sounds, because it sometimes makes things make more sense.
Yeah, sounds do make more sense, honestly. It's like the immediate expression of now just whoa.
I feel like I can express things through sounds that words I'd have a really difficult time, or even like a fusion of sounds and words sometimes really do more than even either by themselves. Maybe that's also why I'm so drawn to music and even like freestyle expression, is because I love that. And it's I think more and more one of my intentions is just to be as like clear and potent of a channel and conduit as I can be for divinity, for truth, for love, for all of the most, higher order qualities to come through. And sometimes it comes out in really weird sounds.
Yep.
And there's wisdom in that. And there's like
the holy sound, the holy weird sound.
The holy weird sounds. Yes.
As you were saying that, it made me think of that. I was like, you appreciate the art of freestyling too, and it's something I also really love. And I think that it taps you into that space, like you can almost witness in real time this deeper truth being expressed through you, and see all of these words being formed. And it's like, whoa, how is this even flowing? How is this even happening? Like, how are these words all coming together in this present moment when you really just tap in and allow it to flow? And freestyling is an interesting art too, because it's like, I think everyone, maybe some more than others, but naturally I think everyone can rhyme. Everyone can like put a couple words together here and there, but there's so much like self-doubt and self-judgment that so many people hold that they fear that the ability to authentically express in that way. Where I've noticed, I felt that way too. The first time I ever tried freestyling was like, so scared about just having other people witness in case I messed up or this or that. And it was so much self-judgment that wouldn't allow me to flow and to express. And I think when you don't have that self-judgment and you are accepting of yourself, regardless of if some stupid noise or word comes out, and you just let yourself be and express, then you can really allow that flow to happen. And I've noticed in my experience with freestyling that when I am flowing and things are going good, it's because I'm tapped in and I'm allowing myself to express with no hindrance or judgment. And the times when I don't feel like I can flow or express, it's usually because I'm carrying some self-judgment and I'm afraid of what other people are going to think around me, and that blocks the flow. And that you can take to any creative endeavor, when it comes to like writing or speaking or art. It's when you are really connected to the present moment and to your being and to that love in you that wants to express and create, then it just comes out so naturally. But if you're living in fear and you're really caught in your self-image and you're like, oh no, this could threaten my self-image if I do this wrong.
This could hurt my wounded ego.
Exactly, yeah. Well, and so that's why I think it's such a critical point, is like whether you're connected to being or whether you're caught in your self-image and your story. There's so much suffering in the story. There's so much victim mindset, so much feeling of confinement when you're just caught in this limitation of these parameters of thought, however expansive or limited you've made that, you know? And if you can set that aside or surrender that or see through it, see through the illusion of it and just connect back to this presence that you are and this being that you are, there's a natural quality of freedom and joy in that. It's like I'm not bound by my past and the experiences that I've had. I'm not bound by those memories. I'm not bound by my fears of the future and what may happen. I'm just here. And being here, I'm free to express myself in any way that I want to feel however I want to, and everything in this moment is okay. And I don't think enough people tap into that feeling of just like, it's okay. I'm okay to just be here. I don't have to run. I don't have to chase after things or add more things to me to be better. And just to step out of that and just feel for once that it's okay to just be. You know, I don't think people connect to that enough and feel that that worthiness of themselves and that freedom in themselves to just allow themselves the joy of being without thinking like they need to go do something else or become something greater. I guess I feel like all of it so much comes back to our minds and our perception and the way that we view things or think about things. And knowing that it's like all in the mind, like what's beyond the mind? Can I just step away from the mind or like move beyond it into this deeper presence and let the mind be? I don't have to demonize the mind and say like it's bad or the story's bad or the thoughts are bad. They're just what they are. Like the mind or like the eye sees, the mind thinks. So it's like that's just thoughts, and just let them be like that. Like instead of getting so hooked on them and so identified with them and thinking they define you. Like you can literally let your mind think whatever it wants and not have it affect you at all if you're connected to your being. It's like, oh, that was a funny thought. Oh well, just keep doing your thing. But you know, so many people get so caught up in that. So yeah, I don't know. I love just getting back in touch with that being and that natural expression. It's like feels so juicy and alive, you know?
Yeah. Well, all that said, I want to ask you a question. Would you be down to do a little freestyling right now?
You got a beat?
No beat, but I mean, I could make a beat with I could like beatbox a little bit if you want. I do more a cappella sometimes, but even if you want a little beat, I could like do a little something for you.
Yeah, usually I need a beat.
I can start out if you want, and then you can maybe try to jump in.
All right, I'm down.
Yeah, if you want to, cool. If you don't, that's cool too.
Yeah, I'll try it. Yeah,
I'm just feeling it to see what wants to come through right now.
Let's do it.
I mean, I always like to push my edge. So
yeah, it's a growth edge for me as well. Like stepping into the like freestyling. I know there's like a little nervousness around it, but I like that. It's like it's a vulnerable, authentic expression. So maybe let's see. You know, maybe it'll be good. Maybe it won't.
Maybe I'll fall on my face. But cool. All right. So I'm just gonna take a couple breaths just to tap in first. Yo, I'm chilling with my brother Jospeh. Yeah, we on the podcast, What the Freak? We trying to figure out what the freak is going on inside my brain, inside my mind. It's so insane, We be talking about them stories. What's your relationship with your stories? Your identity, do you get caught up? Do you get dragged around this life? Or do you take your power back? Do you sink into your body, into your being, into everything that's inside of you already? Or are you still seeking? Are you still striving and grasping and trying to find a sense of peace and joy inside of yourself? Or are you able to tap into your own inner health, your inner wealth? Everything that's coming up for you, it's inside of you. Everything you see that you like, that you think you need, it's inside of you already. If you just tune in, tune your radio receiver to source. I'm coming to you with the force. Like I'm a motherfucking Jedi. I'm a really fun guy. But I don't need you to think anything in particular about me. You can just show up and be.
Yo, you can just show up and be. Whatever comes out, you'll see. Because in this moment, I am free. And I don't need anything else except what's within me. And I see I am not the thought entity. I am awareness, living life carefree but not careless. I know that wherever this flow is gonna go, it's okay, because that's the nature of the flow. The present moment is unfolding in perfection, and whatever happens, it's a reflection of my perception, and I'm detecting some emotions moving within my being, and I'm just here to see them and let them be freeing. Free, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm climbing up the ladder to higher consciousness, moving in different ways, some subtle and some obvious. But whatever happens, I know that I'll be prosperous because I got this shit. I'm trusting myself, and I'm moving in a direction of health. My inner wealth is the contentment. I don't live life with resentment. I live life with joy, and life is a game. It's a play. It's a toy. Whatever I want to do, I do it with joy. Did I say joy already? I think I might have said joy already, but that's fine. I'm just saying some rhymes, having a good time with my man Nathan. And for anyone that's hating, I invite you to have love inside your heart, because this is just an art, and we are just expressing, living life, learning lessons, getting connected to presence, returning to the essence. Yeah.
Yo, what's up? Hey, that was great.
Thank you. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, super fun.
Yeah, I don't usually rhyme a cappella. I like the fusion of a beat, because the beat really, I feel like, informs the way that I flow, because you kind of like synthesize your words with the beat and the rhythm.
Sure.
That's just naturally how I like to do it. So that was cool to like step outside of that.
Well, you did great. I couldn't tell that wasn't your more natural environment you like to freestyle in. So that was dope. Awesome. Thanks for playing. Thanks for being courageous and leaning into that. That was awesome.
Sure. That was fun.
Hell yeah. Cool. Well, as we kind of move towards wrapping up, would love to just open the space to any last remaining thoughts or whatever's coming up that you want to share. I'll just start by saying, I really appreciate this whole conversation around stories and beingness and just our relationship with our experience. And, it's something that I continue to explore more and understand, what is perhaps the most optimal way of me showing up in this life at this time. And, how can I show up in a way that I get to experience more of what I actually desire to experience on a deeper level? How can I show up in a way that is more and more of service to others? And I think that really being willing to dive into some of these deeper questions that can be a little difficult to grasp, especially at first, is such an important endeavor and just worthwhile, because I just imagine, if all humans really had the opportunity and desire and ability to explore these types of questions and ways of being and just have more opportunity to try on different lenses, I feel like we all will continue to be more and more better off. The more awareness we can have around these things. So I appreciate you being just such a trailblazer in your own right, on your own path, and just being so open and willing to share what you can with others to benefit them on their path. I see you, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you for showing up and continuing to do the work, continuing to just deepen into yourself more and more. It's such a powerful gift just to be in your presence and to just witness your journey and to be a part of it in some way. So yeah, thank you so much for just being willing to jump on here, and even more so for being willing to rap on the spot. Much respect and appreciation, and had a really fun time.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, so did I. I love, like I said, I love being able to have these conversations. It always feels like it just flies by. Like it was like 5 minutes, but I'm sure it's been like an hour or so. But yeah, I have found freedom in myself by allowing myself to be myself and allowing myself to lean in to that authentic expression and to the things that bring joy to me, the things that are coming from love rather than coming from fear. And the more that I make those decisions, the more that I follow that, the more it just continues to reinforce that that's the right path, to just keep following my heart instead of following my fear. And that's what I've been trying to do for years, is just to continue to lean into that guidance. I feel like we all have guidance within ourselves, and it's just a matter of whether we listen to that or not. If whether we're chasing after things for a sense of security or fear, or whether we're doing something because it's, coming from the place of love, and we want to help the world, or we want to express ourselves, we want to help others. And I think we all have within us these choices that we can make. We can choose to act from fear, or we can choose to act from love. And I just encourage you and me and anyone that's listening to choose love, to recognize when fear is arising in your experience, and not to allow that to get the better of you, because it's just a story, it's just something in the mind. And the more that you overcome that fear and challenge it, the more you see what an illusion it is. And if, on the other hand, the more you listen to your fear, the more you allow that to guide you, then the smaller and smaller you play a role, and the more you feel confined and trapped and suffer. And so I really feel just the need for myself and to encourage other people to just expand into love, and to let go of these fears, let go of these barriers of self-judgment, of fear of what other people are going to think of you, and just be yourself, do the things that bring you joy, and express love in your own unique creative ways. And I think that's what the world really needs right now, is not to be dominated by fear, is people that are willing to be in love and to express themselves from love. And so I just wanted to share that for anyone that can gain benefit from that, because we tend to get so caught in our minds and so caught in our story, and forget that there's so much more to life. There's so much beauty. So I wanted to wrap up with that, and maybe we can just ourselves, and maybe invite anyone that's listening to just have a very sacred pause and just take 3 deep breaths all together.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. All right, so just breathing in deeply. Breathing out, just letting go. Taking another deep breath in. Letting go of any mental or physical tension. One more deep breath in, just connecting to your breath and to your being. And letting go. You can take that 3 sacred deep breaths anytime that you need to reconnect with yourself, reconnect with your breath. If you're feeling lost in your mind, overwhelmed, just pause and breathe and connect to your being. Connect to love.
Wow. Thank you, brother. Appreciate the closing breath work at the end. I super love just taking more intentional moments to pause and drop in. And thank you for the whole conversation and just for being you. Really appreciate you. And anybody listening, if you really liked what Jospeh was sharing today, definitely go ahead and give him a follow on his social media. We'll have it all linked and everything. Thanks so much for coming out, brother. Super glad to be on this journey with you and just to see where we go from here.
Thanks, brother. Likewise, really grateful for this experience and just to connect with you in this way. So thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a blast.